I'm doing this podcast like I do anything else that I think might afford me some semblance of creative fulfillment. And that is without anyone asking me to. And yes, I'm familiar with the prevailing sentiment that not everyone needs a podcast. And I happen to agree with that. It just doesn't apply to me. I am not everyone. I need a podcast. I'm pretty convinced of that at this point. And yeah, it's been on my should-do list for a while. And I just think it's time. If you know me, you know I'm nothing if not the most interesting person in the room. And if you were as affected by the Spider-Man movie directed by Sam Raimi, released in 2002, as I was when I was a growing boy, then you can extrapolate here, see how my being this interesting might imbue me with some kind of responsibility. I'm tipping my hat to Uncle Ben there. Yeah, there's really no excuse for having waited this long to release MP3s of me talking. It will complement my body of work in the vlogosphere. I will be able to establish a presence in a different sector. And if I really wanted to self-aggrandize here, which I don't, I'm trying to curb that, it will help counterbalance the low-quality garbage that dominates most of the internet. And please know that by help, in this case, I mean make a symbolic gesture toward balancing the scales, because garbage will always prevail. You have to know that. That's the way of the world, and the internet just holds a mirror to it. So, yeah, starting a podcast of quality with the sole intention of raising the layman's standard is misguided. And, I mean, I'll go ahead and say it's pointless. It's exhausting. Yeah, I'm exhausting myself just thinking about it through that lens. And honestly, podcasting isn't something I necessarily want to be spending my time doing. Certainly not alone. But, I'm the only collaborator I know of currently who's going to humor me on this. And I happen to be engaging enough to carry a podcast single-handedly. So here we are. No need to thank me. Ultimately, this is about whether or not I can look myself in the mirror at the end of the day. Yes, overexposing myself is a compulsion of mine, but it does feel like something more at this point. I think you could probably call it a calling if you wanted to speak in Campbellian terms, but I don't think we should be doing that necessarily, because I don't want to put it in your head that I think I'm some kind of hero. I'm not. Even though some people have painted me as such, I've been called an unlikely hero, misunderstood loner with a heart of gold, etc., etc., etc. But again, I'd rather not seed you with archetypal trappings here, because I would like it if you formed your own opinion of my character. And I guess I will say I consider it a good metric of sophistication if someone gets even close to the ballpark appraising me as a person. And like I said, no need to thank me for my contributions to the digital hellscape, but if you do feel so inclined, make sure to do it in the comments section in service of optimization. Thank you. Where was I? Yeah, I should have launched this thing a decade ago, back when starting a podcast was cute. And I did consider doing some mental gymnastics here and rationalizing that I'm late to the game with everything I do. And that could be construed as fashionable, but the numbers don't lie. I am not fashionable, and I think my procrastination here has a lot to do with that perennial question: is the juice worth the squeeze? Fortunately, I think I have settled on an answer to that, and it is no. It never is in my case, but I always end up squeezing anyway, so why not just give in to my nature and go for it instead of loitering in the refusal of the call stage of Joseph Campbell's monomyth. Anything I do is a waste of time if I look at it in a certain light. So I've decided to stop looking and just keep talking. So welcome to my podcast. Who's to say
what you feel, but my best guess is you're curious as to what's my deal, what's my deal, what's my deal.
That was a provisional theme song I whipped up on GarageBand. I'm currently in talks with my half-brother, Victor, a.k.a. Rowan Newby. I want him to make me something permanent and a bit more polished, but he's dragging his feet as he does, and he's saying things like, you can't rush creativity, especially when it's in service of something you don't believe in. And no, I don't take offense when he says stuff like that, because you can't really expect musicians to have much vision when it comes to these kind of things. He'll just have to see for himself what this becomes and then get to it when he gets to it. And what's funny is I wasn't really asking for all that much creativity from him. I gave him the specs. I pretty much just want a cover of Carry On My Wayward Son, scrambled up enough to avoid copyright infringement. He's just being difficult, but you know, that's it's in his nature. All right, what else? Right, okay, so I was going to call this podcast Memoir Field Notes, because I figured, you know, if I keep up with it, it could serve as valuable reference material for whenever I pen my next memoir. But then I got to thinking, hell, this will probably end up being my memoir proper anyway. You know, nobody reads anymore, and I know firsthand just how hard it is to get a memoir published and printed these days. I wrote one in sophomore year of college after I went on a 2-week backpacking trip through Europe, and then another one while I was entrenched in the New York open mic scene. Both very compelling then, and now, as it turns out, they do hold up. Yeah, they hold up rather well. I reread the PDFs last month when my jaw was wired shut, and still, it was hard to keep my mouth closed. They're just so riddled with revelations and insights that I had totally forgotten I had. But yeah, anyway, neither of those memoirs received any feedback from Penguin, Simon & Schuster, or HarperCollins. And yeah, I don't know who was at the helm of those institutions back then, but they were probably stuffy herbs stuck in their ways. I can't say for sure, and I'm not going to take a hard line stance on that anyway, in case they're still there. You know, we may have a working relationship in the future. I don't know. And, you know, I'd like to start giving people the benefit of the doubt. God knows people need to start doing that with me, so I can start. I will lead by example here. There is a distinct possibility the manuscripts got lost in the mail, or, you know, maybe I didn't put enough postage stamps on them. They were well over 500 pages respectively. And also, all of this is beside the point, because I'm not calling this podcast Memoir Field Notes. I went with What's My Deal? Because I get that question a lot, and I think the podcast will be a good resource for anyone who wants to know more about that, me included. Feel free to shorten the title to WMD if you want, but please don't confuse it with the other WMD podcast on Spotify, which is purportedly the #1 podcast in Copper Country. And that one covers topics like guns, flat earth, G Fuel, and John McCain. Also, please don't confuse it with WMDP, i.e. World's Most Dangerous Podcast, where MMA and pro wrestling meets business. Yeah, I'm a lot of things, but I am not a fighter, and I am not business-minded, unfortunately. It's very hard for me to identify, much less understand my target demographic, and I don't know what to sell people, honestly, other than myself. You know, I guess I could try to sell watches or slap bracelets. I've been told I have nice hands, and was even approached by a hand model agent outside of a bar in Milwaukee one time. I wasn't even aware that was a thing, hand model agents, but They're out there. Oh, and yes, please refrain from confusing What's My Deal with either of the What's Your Deal podcasts. One of those is hosted by Mark Corona, of course, and that one focuses on the deals marketplace. And then another one is hosted by Ariana Lenarski, who uses tarot cards to analyze the guests she has on there. God knows why they would subject themselves to that, but that's coming from me. I tend to have a pretty contentious relationship with fortune tellers because they never quite, I don't know, they always default to my future being less bright than I think it has the potential to be. But yeah, no, I'm sure there are other What's Your Deal podcasts out there, but I can't imagine they're worth mentioning here. This is What's My Deal. If my deal is something you're interested in, as I navigate various art scenes to codify my reputation as a creative force to be reckoned with, you've come to the right place. Again, welcome.
What's my deal? What's my deal?
Important note here, if you're watching this on a vertical video sharing platform, know that you're watching a mere clip of the episode. The rest of it's going to live on YouTube and on podcast platforms. And in the latter, it'll be in audio format exclusively. I know there are a few of you who enjoy scrutinizing my micro expressions for 20 minutes a pop, but you're in the minority, unfortunately. I've seen the audience retention graphs, and most people watching on YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram opt to spend no more than 2 seconds looking at my face. And, I think I've cultivated enough empathy the past few months to say I can't blame them for that. My content may be a bit hard to digest for less sophisticated or less discerning viewers, or, maybe looking at me inspired them to attend to more pressing matters than staring at their screens. That's unlikely, but either way, I've chosen not to take it personally. One of the obvious perks of a podcast is that you can listen to my voice while you're doing other things, like anything. Your taxes, driving in-laws to doctor's appointments, tending to offspring, whatever it is. The point is, I can be in your ear while you're performing these tasks that I will likely never experience or understand, and we can still connect in a way that counts, or you can connect with me in that way. Some of you may know that Henry David Thoreau quote, "The mass of men lead lives of quiet desperation." I think he was probably right about that, and I think desperation may be one of my most relatable qualities. I'm just not particularly quiet about mine. And I wouldn't say I'm loud either. I don't shout it from the hilltops or anything. I tend to talk it out like this from whatever platform I'm trying to build up at the time. And I just really hope people can read into the subtext and recognize that I am crushed by the weight of ennui and all my unfulfilled desires, because I do want people to feel connected to me. Thing is, the latter half of my 30s, I felt socially stunted, I guess is how I would put it. I'm doubling down on my life's work, and I'm shutting out people who claim to have my best interests at heart, but there's no way to know. And I don't know. I'm just starting to think parasocial relationships may be the most meaningful and sustainable ones I have moving forward. So, for those of you listening who are unfamiliar with my work, allow me to introduce myself. I am Alex McKelvey. I'm an actor, poet, screenwriter, essayist, satirist, and now podcaster. Again, welcome to my orbit. You've stumbled on a brilliant, if troubled mind. Those aren't my words. That is a character reference from one of my contemporaries, a great actor by the name of Justin Miles, who in the same breath actually described me as someone who could ingratiate himself with just about anyone if he wanted to, but opts for self-sabotage and crippling shame instead. A very interesting take from Justin. And I'll give him this, pretty convincing at the time he said it. This was a few months back after I had just woken up from a nap on the hood of my car outside of a bar I had a job interview at. Justin is friends with the owner, and he was pitching me as a personality hire because he's just, I don't know, he's a solid dude. And yeah, I'm hoping to have him on the podcast soon. He has not been answering my calls the past few weeks, but we'll get him in here. It's a blessing, really, to have acquaintances who help me define my gestalt, because I have a hard time with that. You know, I'm like 20 different people at any given time, and I'm just too close to what I do. I guess you could call me a mixed media performance artist, merging reality and fiction, and you know, I've chosen to live in a liminal space between order and chaos, blindly reaching out for new creative frontiers. And it's hard for me to get a handle on what the byproduct of that may look like from a third-party perspective. I can only imagine it looks fucked up. You know, always using myself as a subject, following my compulsion to challenge normies, to reckon with me as I am, when I can't even say for sure what I am because I have too much intellectual integrity. It's exhausting. It's exhausting. And honestly, it probably all arises from being a condom baby. You know, whichever one of my dad's sperm cells fertilized the egg had to breach a latex barrier first. And I guess as a result, I inherited this complex where I never really felt invited to the party, if that makes sense. So, yeah, maybe I feel like I have to crash the party on some level and then justify crashing the party by contributing to the culture at large. Yeah, I'm getting off track, but maybe I can tie it in. What's My Deal is one of my contributions to the culture at large, and it centers on my observations and travails navigating whatever scene. I think I've covered that. Basically, you're listening to a millennial committed to being the voice of his generation when we already have those. You know, we already have Lena Dunham and Taylor Swift. There's also Hayley Williams of Paramore, if you'd rather. And if there's any romance to this enterprise, it's precisely because it's a lost cause, and I'm still at it. With my spirit still somewhat intact. I won't say one way or another if that's admirable, but, you know, I will say it could be construed thus. Yeah, right now acting is probably my primary focus because it seems like the needle has been moving in that direction the past couple months. In fact, I was supposed to have this out about a month ago, but acting obligations and injuries sustained while acting got in the way. I did just get representation. Shout out to Andrea Lang for her guidance on that. Oh, and this may come as a surprise to those of you who know how DIY I am, but I've been enrolled in an acting class the past few months. It's not because I need formal training. I don't. I'm a natural, and I'm an autodidact, really, akin to William Faulkner and Tom Cruise. Applying for this class was more like a symbolic gesture, a way of showing my commitment to the art of living on screen. And it's in the Demidov School, which I appreciate. If you don't know, Nikolai Demidov was a Russian theater practitioner who built on Stanislavski's work, and his techniques focus on breaking barriers to the subconscious, which should prime actors for unbridled creative freedom in their work. So, and yeah, I love it. I'm not going to pretend I don't, you know. And to be honest, during these weekly 3-hour sessions, I feel a sense of community, which is out of character for me. And yes, that does end as soon as the class is dismissed. But still, I haven't felt that degree of community feeling since I took a handful of shrooms at a crab boil last summer. So it's wild. It's trippy. And yeah, just to reiterate, I don't need the class any more than Tom Cruise needed the single acting workshop he took through the William Esper studio. I do take a lot of stock in Tom's approach, which is to just learn by doing while getting paid. And I have been getting more paid gigs recently, which I am grateful for. I just wish the roles were more challenging. Some of these directors feel like they need to treat me with kid gloves for some reason. The only stunt that's ever really asked of me is to fall to the ground, and there's always a crash mat. I guess I was tossed around by pro wrestler Darby Allin at one point, but he's a pro, so it felt more like a Samba class or something. I just let him lead while he maneuvered my body in cinematic ways. And it looked painful. It looked daring, but it didn't feel that way. It made me feel more like a puppet than a man risking life and limb for his craft, which is something I would really love to feel one day. Give me some of the resources Tom has, and I would gladly ride a motorcycle off a cliff or hang from the rudder of a helicopter. I would have no problem with that. And if you don't believe me, if you're a producer or you're in casting or whatever, and you're hearing this, try me. Get the ball moving on that. Imbue my life on screen with more action, because the clock is ticking. With regard to acting and performing stunts in general, it may not be a viable career path for sentient human beings that much longer. I mean, I'll keep doing it for purist productions, student films, and I'll do it for free. But still, yeah, time just seems to be of the essence these days on that score. I'm not really stressing about my biology or, aging out of these roles or whatever. I supplement with N80+. I recently played a high school bully in a Werecat feature. So yeah, I still got it. And all that aside, I'd be totally fine being an old action star a la Liam Neeson. I think there's a lot of value in what that man has done the past decade or so. The way he resonates with aging male viewership is it's inspiring. These men feel obsolete, and they miss the days when men had to man up and kill armed adversaries to protect their families, and they get to see that on the silver screen, it's nice. I think he's probably one of our last old action stars. And AI is probably going to be taking most of the daring do roles by the time I'm in my 60s, certainly my 70s. So yeah, please keep your ear to the ground for any opportunities for me while that door is still open. Where was I? Right, this episode should have come out about a month ago. I told you my jaw was wired shut for a few weeks, and that is owing to a scene I did in class with a fellow student, Cody, who inadvertently broke my jaw while he was doing a backflip. And, I was struggling to figure out why he's always doing backflips in scenes. It certainly didn't feel particularly relevant to our scene. I think I was serving him divorce papers or something. It is funny, though, before the incident, I went to the teacher after one of the classes, and I was like, don't you think Cody may be doing too many backflips in his scene work? I don't know. Maybe I had a premonition or something, because I told the teacher that the backflips didn't just seem gratuitous, that they felt like a liability. My teacher just said that his hands were tied on this, that if a backflip happens to be Cody's first impulse in a scene, he has to follow it in accordance with Demidov, who says you should give in to your automatic movements and gestures and avoid interfering with the flux of your inner life. I pressed a bit. I guess I was struggling to categorize a backflip as a type of automatic movement, especially given the context of a lot of the scenes I was seeing them in. In fact, as far as I know, none of the scenes were set in a gymnasium, at a pool, or at a circus. And I was like, don't you think Cody's inner life is probably more complex than just backflips? And I think he thought I was being judgmental because he sat me down and asked if I was able to discern any nuance to Cody's backflips. You know, like if I could differentiate any one backflip from the other. And I was like, sure, yeah. I mean, Cody is proficient in all the backflips. He's got the back tuck, the back layout. He'll even shoehorn in a spin here and there, anything from a 180 to a 540. And he lands them nearly every time. And if he doesn't, he makes it look intentional. The teacher nodded, said that that was correct. But more importantly, Cody's backflips vary widely in tone and emotive quality. And I had to concede his point. I said he was right. And, you know, who am I to say that Cody's inner life isn't mainly backflips? People interface with the world in different ways. And I came to find out later that he does come from a stunt background. So I don't know. Maybe I was just being jealous of his physicality. I don't want to think that, but anyway, it was this whole ordeal. Like I said, my jaw was wired shut for about 3 weeks. And in that time, I wasn't assigned any lines in class. I was given silent roles in scenes. And if I'm going to look at the silver lining there, it was a good exercise in restraint. You know, because I had to react to other people's lines without speaking. You know, especially when your face is in as much pain as mine was. It was difficult. I found myself just nodding a lot and giving my scene partners occasional thumbs ups, but minimal ones that were rooted in our shared reality. And it's kind of like what Alan Rickman says. He says acting is more about listening than doing. I think I kind of internalized that over the course of those 3 weeks. Yeah, it was nice. I don't know. The teacher praised me for my efforts. And what's more, I think I earned a bit of cred from my peers if my meta-perception wasn't completely off. I did have a bit of a concussion from Cody's flash kick, but I don't think it was pity I was detecting from the other students. I'm pretty sure it was respect. Something comparable to what Viggo Mortensen earned while breaking toes and chipping teeth during the filming of Lord of the Rings. And, you know, just forcing myself to be present while being mute for the most part just highlighted my dedication to both the art and the craft of acting. Oh, and it also gave me a much needed break from talking, which is kind of fortuitous because I'm doing this now. So yeah, moving on. That is history. I am healed up and off my liquid diet, and I'm as ready as I will ever be to get this thing going. I can't remember where I heard it, but apparently you just have to publish 21 episodes to be in the top 1% of the world's podcasts. So that's my first goal I've set for myself with this project. And again, I'm also just excited to optimize my online presence more, at least enough to overshadow the other Alex McKelveys I keep seeing in Google searches. There's the one in San Diego who's the global head of commercial technology at Pacific Biosciences. And then there's the other one who's been immortalized as the 8-year-old girl who performed 600 acts of kindness in memory of her grandma for like the past 15 years, which is, yeah. So no, I don't know. I'm hoping this podcast helps me with that. And I guess I will sign off here with a poem I wrote this morning after doing my Lee Strasberg sense memory exercise. I'm never too little. I'm just wired to be late. I'm not good enough algorithmically, but I've been rumored to be great. And content is my burden, a Sisyphean substrate. And much like Giles Corey, I ask for more weight. And the weight in this case is the work this podcast will be requiring of me moving forward. Again, I'm not looking forward to that, but it is what it is. Okay, yeah, I will see you next time.
Whether it's the show kind or personal mind, she's business, commit to the process of learning what his deal is. A project for teenagers, a piecemeal reveal of his deal, an episodic uncovering of an ego ideal. What's his deal? If there's an answer, it's here, and it's greater than the sum of its episodes.